Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland Weekly Update. Good to see you guys again. It's been about a week and a half. I was in Italy from Thursday to early Wednesday morning this week. I went to a place called Val Gardenia in the Dolomite region. We flew into Milan, and it was about a 4 hour drive to the mountains. The Dolomites are the most beautiful mountain range I've ever seen. It was the best resort I've ever skied at. It's a limestone type mountain, and I've posted some photos from it. It was just an amazing trip. I went with my son, which was great, my brother and nephew, and my brother's grandson. The ski slope was amazing, like 40-mile long of mountains. It goes into Cortina, where the Olympics are going to be next month. Um, Italian people were nice by and large. I did notice a difference uh, being in Italy now as opposed to 2 years ago. They were not as nice to us. There was comments made about American politics and what America is doing with Venezuela and threatening Greenland and different things. The Italians were more vocal about their displeasure with some of the things going on politically in our country, which was something new. I've been to Florence, Pisa, and Venice many times, um, and Rome, of course, and they're usually appreciative of Americans and our tourism dollars, but it was kind of interesting. So I do recommend if you're skiers. I've been to Zermatt, Switzerland, and this was the best skiing by far I've ever experienced in my life. Um, the big news this week, obviously, is Davos in Switzerland and Trump's speech yesterday, which was pretty much a campaign speech of what he's done over the last year. I mean, and when he does his State of the Union speech in the coming weeks, it's going to be about the same. The big announcement was that he's not going to use military force or attack Greenland. Doesn't look like the United States is going to end up owning Greenland. They'll own or have perpetual leases to build bases and different enclaves for possibly the space station that Trump wants. And the Secretary of NATO agreed with Trump that Russia and China are threats in that region, and something needs to be done along the shoreline. But it's clear that when Trump announced that he was going to put tariffs on the European countries, especially Denmark, for not giving up Greenland, of starting at 10% and going up to 25% in June if they opposed his taking Greenland and America owning it. Um, and The market reacted negatively. What ended up happening is Trump heard the music, heard from a number of companies and a lot of people in Congress who said, that's just an amazing bridge too far for us. We are not going to attack a NATO country. Just threatening a NATO country is a violation of Article 5. And don't forget, after 2001, September 11th, all the NATO countries came to our aid, and Article 5 was invoked, I think, for the first time since the creation of NATO. And us attacking Greenland would be a violation of Article 5. What it's done is it's created a long-term um, distrust now that Europe has with America. There's no question that Europe needs to do more for its own defense and shouldn't rely and can't rely on American dollars to provide defense that they should be providing for their own country. And so something positive that Donald Trump has done over the last 10 years has gotten these European NATO countries to spend up to 5% of their GDP. Some countries are doing it already. Some countries will have until 2035 to reach that 5% threshold. But the United States basically was financing most of the NATO up until Donald Trump. So that is a positive. What has happened is Europe looks at us differently now. We are not somebody that they can trust, regardless of treaties, regardless of what promises we make. NATO does believe that Donald Trump will never protect them. He will never agree to Article 5 to attack Russia or any other country that gets aggressive with a NATO ally. It's just not going to happen. And, even though Donald Trump isn't going to be president forever, we hope, some of us do at least. Um, it is I think the egg has been broken, that NATO realizes that they have to provide for themselves. And I think it's going to push them long term into the hands of China and other countries that aren't necessarily aligned with the United States. Some people will say this is Trump chickening out again, taco. Um, but there is something to be said for what Donald Trump is accomplishing with Greenland. But I think that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, meaning you've created such ill will by threatening to bomb a country and take their land against the wishes of Denmark and Greenland. But let's be clear, Greenland. They have their own complaints about Denmark. Denmark for years did forced sterilization on the Inuk, the indigenous people of Greenland, tying fallopian tubes and removing fallopian tubes of young kids so that there wouldn't be a population explosion. Denmark has not been a great paternalistic figure for Greenland. But again, I'm very happy that Trump ruled out using military force to acquire Greenland. Look, Cuba, there could be a time where we do use military force on it. I think it's only a matter of time. I do agree with Trump that I think by the end of the year, Cuba will fall. The United States has turned the spigot off of the Venezuelan oil that was provided to Cuba. Their economy stinks. They're having blackouts constantly with electricity, and if they don't get their oil, the country's going to fall. And I do think we may end up using military force on there. I hope we don't use military force to get the Panama Canal. Trump yesterday went crazy on Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, who really was offended by Trump's speech. What Trump said is he degraded these European countries. He said they're failed countries, that they fail on energy and a whole different stuff. And, people don't like to hear it. And so Carney came out and said something, and now he's on Trump's bad list, and Trump's going to focus his sights on probably getting Canada. You can't threaten countries and then reach an agreement and feel like, oh, well, this is great, we won and everybody's going to be happy. I think there's long-term consequences that can come when you start threatening countries and say that they're going to be part of the United States. And if you don't agree, we'll take your country by force. Today is a day where Jack Smith is testifying before Congress, before the House Oversight Committee. He gave a deposition last month, which was devastating to Donald Trump and what he did on January 6th in the document case. Yes, there'll be a lot of political grandstanding where, some House members are going to use up their time just to talk and not get any answers from Jack Smith. But Jack Smith is really going to, I think, lay it out for the public so they can hear exactly the evidence that he had. Trump said that he wanted to call the renamed Gulf of Mexico instead of Gulf of America, like it's called now. He wanted to call it the Gulf of Trump. America owns 92% of the land in the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, depending on what you want to call it. But Trump was advised by his people that that was a bridge too far. I flew into the JFK airport from Milan, Italy, and it made me think about the Trump Kennedy Center. I wonder why he isn't going to call the JFK airport the Trump JFK airport. Again, I'm very reticent about naming things among living people while they're in office, because the book and the chapters are not closed. We already know what happened with Joe Paterno in the Sandusky matter. I prefer to wait till somebody, God forbid, dies before we do that. EU has frozen their trade deals with the United States indefinitely after his Greenland and tariff threats. They haven't said whether they're going to open those back up again. Um, he threatened all the countries that would have opposed him on the Greenland acquisition with tariffs. He also is going to tariff France 200% on their wine exports to the United States as a result of Macron saying that he doesn't want to sit on Trump's board of peace. The board of peace is for Gaza. People are worried that it's going to try to replace the United Nations, which we all have a lot of problems with, mainly Trump, but I do too. You have to have $1 billion you got to commit $1 billion and you'll get a permanent seat on the board. Otherwise, it's a rotating seat. Macron turned down Trump's offer to sit on the board because Trump actually offered a board seat to Russia, which really is a slap in the face to Ukraine and all the other European countries. And it just goes to show you just can't trust Trump. And so as a result, Trump said he's going to tariff French wine $200,000. There was a memo that the press got a hold of that was internal from the federal ICE officials that they're not going to get warrants, that they're just going to enter people's homes without a warrant, which is against every type of Fourth Amendment constitutional issue we have. We know that earlier this week they pulled out a United States citizen in his underwear, thinking that he was housing illegal undocumented immigrants in his house. Very scary stuff to start having warrantless searches. It's starting to feel like the Gestapo. It's crazy that every one involved in the Renee Good shooting, the mayor, Governor Waltz, Mayor Fry, including Renee Good and her girlfriend, are being investigated. Everybody except the officer that shot Good, which is truly stunning to me. Trump found out that Renee Good's father was a Trump supporter, so now he has to talk a little bit better about her. Trump has made a staggering $1.4 billion since returning to office. It was exposed. So he has used the president of the United States to increase his wealth by $1.4 billion. He's investing $100 million in bonds being offered by Netflix. And he's the one who's going to give authority to the FTC and the FCC and the SEC for them to approve any transaction where Netflix may acquire CBS. It's really stunning to me what is going on. We have the emoluments clause in our Constitution, and yet nothing is being done, certainly by the totally useless and ineffective Congress. Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, said that he's all for impeaching judges today. Boasberg and another judge that have ruled against Trump. Some of these are Trump-appointed judges. It's really, really troublesome when the Speaker of the House starts to say that judges who are under Article 3 of our Constitution should be impeached. Can you imagine selling a seat on this Board of Peace to rebuild Gaza for $1 billion? And where is that $1 billion going to go to? Donald Trump is the permanent chairman of the Board of Peace, not just him as president, but he will remain as long as he is alive. I saw an interview this week where a lady who's a grandma ordered a $22 Barbie doll from Canada, and she got hit with a massive $802 tariff fee. And that's what I talked about a couple of weeks ago, where it's starting to turn. Remember, in 2025, 80% of the tariffs were paid for by the manufacturer or the importer, and it hadn't reached the customer. This year, that 80% is going to be thrown to the customer, and only the manufacturer and the importer are going to pay 20% of it. Trump said he's going to start flying in his $400 million Qatari jet, which was at the center of the corrupt allegations and accusations of Qatar. He's going to do it this summer. Hopefully, he said by July 4th, the 250th anniversary of our country. It became more of a focus yesterday when his Air Force One had to turn around after it took off to go to Davos, Switzerland, to get something checked. I just think it's a disgrace. It debased our presidency that we are taking an airplane from a country that supports Hamas and has been on our terror watch list. Iran reiterated its warning today to the United States that any military action against the country's leadership would trigger a devastating retaliation. The spokesperson, the general staff of Iran's armed forces said, is that bellicose? Probably. I don't know what Iran, their power is anymore, but the Ayatollah is clearly going down with a fight. Independent news agency said almost 4,000 Iranians have been executed since the uprising has occurred. Donald Trump said that he would not be using military force against Iran. Again, that's pressure that was received by the market. He only changes his mind when the stock market starts to drop. It's at over 49,000 right now. The economic news is certainly positive for him. Interest rates are going to come down. He's going to place Kevin, I think his name is Hager or Hazley, one of his economic advisors, is going to be the next chairman of the Fed, and he's going to lower interest rates by 2%. So older people are not going to make any interest on their money. It's going to go down to 2% on borrowing. Banks are not going to make any money, but you're going to be able to borrow money if you are a real estate speculator like Donald Trump, put it into an investment, not have to pay a lot of carrying costs, and then hopefully you get appreciation and equity in a project. It's a little bit stunning to me. Trump is accused now of doing the same mortgage fraud in a new investigation that he's claiming that Letitia James and Jim Comey did, and others, Eric Swalwell. The only difference, he said, is he didn't have an intent to deceive. That's what the White House is saying now. They can't deny that he placed two separate mortgage applications for two separate properties in Florida, saying that they would be his primary residence. But he's saying, unlike the others, I didn't have an intent to defraud. Oh boy, isn't that a bunch of bullshit? An agent shot an undocumented agent in a undocumented individual in Minnesota after the Renee Good shooting. That happened last week. Trump is now threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act against Minnesota if they decline to stop protesters from attacking ICE officers, and he's going to release American troops into Minnesota, which will be against the Posse Comissar law. ICE is now also focusing efforts on Maine. That's a payback against Susan Collins, who has she voted to impeach Trump, and he's never forgotten her for that. Thankfully, a California federal judge, rejected the efforts of the Department of Justice to gather sensitive voter roll data. They want that to harass people so that they won't vote. Thankfully, this week, Lindsay Halligan, the joke of a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, she really wasn't. She was a temporary appointment. Remember, she's an insurance defense lawyer. She finally gave up her seat. This is hours after a Trump-appointed federal judge called her leadership a charade. He said this charade of Miss Halligan masquerading as the United States attorney for this district is in direct defiance of court orders and must come to an end. That was by a Trump-appointed judge, because after our federal judge, Cameron Curry, said that the indictments that she signed and brought against Jim Comey and Letitia James were invalid because her appointment as a temporary U.S. attorney for 120 days. It ended. Remember, she could always become the permanent one if Congress and the Senate would approve her. But the Senate already said they're not approving her, even the Republicans, because she's not qualified. And she continued to sign indictments as the attorney general, U.S. attorney for Virginia. And a judge finally said no. Mexico's security minister said Tuesday that it had sent 37 cartel drug members to the United States as the Trump administration requested. That's a really good development. Again, that's a positive for Donald Trump's border immigration policy. Again, before yesterday, Senate Republicans said they'll do everything to block efforts by President Trump to seize Greenland by military force. Two Republican senators, Tom Tillis and Lisa Murkowski, traveled to Copenhagen on Friday to assure the Danish minister that the Republican opposition to Trump using military force would be strong. Originally, Trump said having anything less than Greenland in the United States' hand is unacceptable. But again, we always know that he is full of sound and fury, sometimes signifying nothing. Lindsey Graham, in his New York Times bestseller book, How to Test Negative for Stupid, Louisiana Senator Republican John Kennedy said he offered a blunt insider view and anecdotes of what Washington thinks of our Senator, Lindsey Graham. He said that Graham is deeply hawkish, hard-drinking wild card on foreign policy who might just as easily get drunk and vomit in the fish tank as engage in serious debate, underscoring the South Carolina senator's reputation for military aggression and unpredictable behavior that has become fodder for Washington gossip. He's just no longer respected. He's been on so many both sides of an issue that it's ridiculous. I think we can do so much better than the small, diminutive man of Lindsey Graham. Mitch McConnell finally spoke up and said Trump's Greenland ambitions would be an unprecedented act of strategic self-harm. A little bit too late of Mitch McConnell. He could have gone down as the statesman after January 6, 2021, when we had the insurrection. He said that he would vote for impeaching Trump, and 2 weeks later, he did not. Trump Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the administration can't comply with judge's order to give deported migrants a chance to challenge their removal. So it's just another case where the administration says it's not going to follow existing law or court orders. Trump endorsed the primary opponent to Republican Senator Bill Cassidy. He's a gastroenterologist, a really good guy. He's going to be primaried by Trump's encouragement because Kennedy came out with vaccine recommendations, which Bill Cassidy, who's a doctor, disagreed with. So there's a Democratic push now by lawmakers to target Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem because of her actions after the shooting of Rebecca Good, saying that she was a domestic terrorist. A woman was pulled out of a car by federal agents in Minneapolis last week. The woman was disabled, and she said she was on her way to a doctor's appointment. Trump said a day of reckoning and retribution is coming into Minneapolis, and I think it's for a number of reasons. One, I think it's because he doesn't like Tim Walz. I think it's also because of the immigration issues, but I also think it's the Somalia issue of the $9 billion, $10 billion of fraud. He really has gone hard against Ilhan Omar, the Somali representative from Minnesota. I think that she should be investigated. Her net worth went from 0 to 31 million with her fiance, um, or I think it's her new husband, in 1 year. He's a hedge fund guy that doesn't have any clients, and he's supposedly a manufacturer of wine. For the first time in 50 years, the United States experienced a negative net immigration migration, which is amazing. The border is essentially closed. I mean, Donald Trump again kept his word, and we do not have a lot of people going in. Um, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said there's no basis to open up an investigation on the shooting. Um, but there's going to be prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota who resigned. 6 of them resigned as a result of the federal government not investigating the shooting of Renee Good. Um, the Senate GOP killed the war powers effort to limit Donald Trump and what he can do in Venezuela. J.D. Vance broke the tie. Again, that is Congress trying to should be asserting their right to declare war if we're going to do that with Venezuela. But again, they chickened out and giving these plenary powers to the president. 57% of the people do not support how the Minnesota shooting of Renee Good happened. Joe Rogan, of all people, said he didn't support it. He said he doesn't want to live in a country where you have to carry your papers and people are going to come up to you like the Gestapo did during the Holocaust era and ask for your papers. In addition to Senator Mark Kelly, now Senator Elise Slotkin is being investigated by the U.S. Attorney Jean Pirro because she also participated in that commercial where she implored people in the military to only follow lawful orders and not follow illegal orders. The FBI raided a house of a Washington Post reporter in Virginia last week, did so without a warrant, with a warrant, I'm sorry, and that is really in dangerous territory under the First Amendment. A Secret Service officer was rightfully suspended as a result for revealing personal secrets about J.D. Vance's security detail to his romantic interest, the Secret Service's romantic interest. Can't do that, guys. You got to keep it in confidence. Trump is reportedly funding money from Venezuela oil sales to a bank account in Qatar. No question, he's going to try to enrich himself and his family on the Venezuelan oil. And let's be clear, this was a invasion not to just get Maduro. It had nothing to do with drugs and everything to do with oil. Remember, the first administration had adults in the room. They had McMaster, they had General Mattis, they had Ralph Tiller, they had Tillerson as the Secretary of State, who did everything to block Trump's worst instincts. This administration is full of sycophants and people who amplify Trump's worst instincts and don't stop him and encourage him. And that would be Scott Bessent. I think he's going to go down as one of the worst Treasury secretaries this country has ever had. He is more than a Trump cheerleader. I think he is a dangerous person to have in that position, and also in control of the IRS. Here's a good one. The Trump administration slash funding for substance abuse and mental health programs nationwide. Isn't that great? The Supreme Court rules that House Republicans can challenge mail-in ballots and the deadlines for that. So again, it's just cutting more against the Voters' Rights Acts. Mike Tomlin retired from the Pittsburgh Steelers with 2 years left on his contract. I think he's going to take some time off to enjoy his family, go make about $10 million in the studio, and he's going to come back and coach. He made the playoffs, had a winning record every single season of his 21 seasons, made the playoffs, won Super Bowl, but for the last 9 years have been knocked out of the playoffs. John Harbaugh, excuse me, is the new coach of the Giants. Really excited about that. I'm an NFC East guy, obviously, with the Eagles. I think he's going to do a good job. He's more of a CEO type coach. He has a special teams background, but really wasn't an offensive defensive coordinator, but knows how to be a leader of men. Journeyman quarterback TJ Finley is committed to playing next season at an FCS school in San Antonio, marking the 7th college football program that the Louisiana native will play for in his career. That's 7, folks. Truly stunning to me. I think it's gotten totally out of control. The Duke quarterback, for instance, has been offered, they say, $10 million to go to Miami, University of Miami from Duke. He was a 7-5 quarterback, very good, but certainly not amongst the top 10 quarterbacks in the country. We're talking $10 million. That's going to create a lot of locker room problems with other football team members who aren't getting that kind of money or getting that kind of money at all. Miami's going to need a quarterback. They buy a quarterback every year. They didn't win the national championship. Indiana did, and we'll talk about that. I think you should only have one chance during your career to get in the portal and transfer schools one time. I don't think you should be able to play for a different school every year. Kiefer Sutherland was arrested for assaulting an Uber driver, $50,000 bail. He has a history of assaults. Former Colorado Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell, who was an American Indian, he has died. The Falcons have hired Kevin Stefanski, who was fired by the Browns. The Bills lost, and as a result, McDermott was fired as their coach. He just had a 12-5 season, took them almost to the AFC Championship game, taken them a number of times. But he's like Marv Levy, the former coach of the Bills, who went to 3 straight Super Bowls and lost them all. I don't think you could fire a coach like Sean McDermott, who has 12 wins and has been a winning coach. Remember, only one team gets to win the national championship. Only one team can win the Super Bowl. So Josh Allen, his career is unbelievable. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL, but he clearly didn't have a good game. He threw 2 picks. He had 2 fumbles in the game where they lost on Sunday night. Kurt Cignetti is the Indiana coach. He said he's going to stay with Indiana, which was the losingest program in FBS football in the history of FBS, Power 5 schools. They won the national championship Monday night. Their quarterback is just amazing. I think he's going to be the first pick in the draft. Cignetti got a $2 million bonus for winning the national championship and an automatic escalation in his contract that's going to make him one of the top 3 highest paid coaches in college football at $14.5 million. Hard to believe 2 years ago he was at James Madison University, only making $800,000 a year. Bo Nix, who beat the Denver Broncos, who beat the Buffalo Bills, broke his ankle. So I think the Super Bowl is going to be with New England against Seattle, and I think Seattle's going to win the Super Bowl. DJ Lagway, he went through the portal from Florida and ended up at Baylor. His father was a running back at Baylor. It was thought that he was possibly going to go to Duke or even Clemson. Clemson lost a linebacker this morning that came from Cal, was one of the best linebackers in the nation in a portal, actually started school at Clemson 2 weeks ago, was listed, participating in off-season workouts, and he's leaving, and I think he's either going to go to LSU or Miami. Robert Saleh, who was the former coach of the Jets, who went back and became the defensive coordinator of the 49ers this year. They lost so many defensive players. He did a great job. He's now going to coach the Tennessee Titans. Mike McDaniel, shockingly, was considered as the former coach of the Miami Dolphins for many of the jobs, Cleveland Browns and the Raiders job. He took the offensive coordinator job with Jim Harbaugh at the Los Angeles Chargers. Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones were elected to the Hall of Fame this week. And Indiana suffered a blow hours after their national championship as Fernando Mendoza's brother, Alberto, is entering the portal. So Indiana's going to need another quarterback if they're going to repeat his national championship. The Chiefs fired their offense coordinator, Nagy, who was the former coach of the Bears. He did a horrible job this year, yet he's being considered for some of the openings in the college, in the pros. Mike McCarthy's being considered for a new coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that would be a horrible hire. Eric Bieniemy was hired as the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. He had worked with Patrick Mahomes from 2018 to 2022. Travis Kelce loved the hire and seemed to indicate by his response that he's going to come back next year. They also fired their running back coach and their defensive back coach. Let's now go to some of the listeners' questions. When someone has to go to the deposition to get to be deposed, do they have to bring an attorney? I would always, if you're in harm's way or you're part of the problem that is being investigated, I would always have an attorney. Do you have to answer every question that's asked? You do, unless they're harassing questions or they involve attorney-client privilege or trade secret questions. What is my prediction on how long it will take the South Carolina Supreme Court that will be making a decision on whether to grant Alex Murdaugh a new trial? I think it's going to be probably 6 months or more for them to do that. The appeal is going to be next month. They usually last each side a half hour, and then there's about a 5 or 10 minute rebuttal period. He is appealing his conviction in March of 2023 on two bases. One, that Judge Newman let in financial crimes that were committed against many of my clients, Gloria Satterfield and others, as well as against Alex Murdaugh in violation of the Rule 403, 404, that it is bad character evidence that goes to proving his guilt on an unrelated crime and was highly prejudicial, as well as the interference with the juror issues involving convicted felon now, Becky Hill. Is it a do-over, an appeal? No, it's essentially, was it proper for certain evidentiary decisions to be made, and whether the former Chief Justice Toll applied the correct standard for determining juror interference. You remember Dick and Jim argued there was a federal standard that said all you have to apply is to show that there was juror interference by Becky Hill, and once you do, you get a new trial. Justice Toll said the South Carolina standard had to apply, which is you show juror interference, but you also have to show that interference would have changed the outcome of the verdict. I think that it was a correct decision for Judge Newman to admit the financial crimes because it goes to motive, even though that motive was not an element of murder. It did show why Alex would have killed Maggie and Paul. It is very hard to overturn a jury verdict once 12 people have spoken, if the judge has made correct evidentiary decisions. If it was wrong for him to have admitted the financial crimes, then you will get a new trial. I think that Alex will lose on the state level. I don't think they will overrule Justice Toll. They may overrule Judge Newman, but on a federal level, there may be a chance, based on the Sixth Amendment right to a fair criminal trial, that Alex will get a new trial based on Justice Toll applying the state standard for juror interference and not the federal standard. We shall see. That is why the financial crime cases that my partner Ronnie Richter and I handled were so vitally important, because Alex will never get out of prison, regardless if the murder conviction is reversed. He gets a new trial and they hold him not guilty, or it's a hung jury. He's doing 27 years, which he'll do 23 in state prison. He won't get out till he's 79. And then he has to go do 40 years in a federal prison. He was transferred to Broad River Road Prison recently. And I understand he is in solitary confinement, not in Gen Pop. He's in his cell alone for 24 hours a day. And it's psychologically taxing on him. Good for him. Hope he suffers. Minnesota police say that ICE is profiling and harassing off-duty officers of color. Wouldn't surprise me. ICE is totally out of control. They have their identities covered up by masks. They don't have identification of their names. They don't wear body cameras. It's really disgusting. I talked about the world leaders rallying together against Donald Trump's Greenland threats. I think that he's violating international law. He's certainly violating Article 5 by threatening a NATO ally, Denmark. And his rhetoric is causing long-term damage to our country. The articles have come out that said that the Americans are paying the high costs of tariffs, and they will always hit American families first. The consumer will be the first person that has to pay for it. Manufacturers aren't going to eat this forever. The Supreme Court's going to have to make a decision on that, whether they are correct, and whether Congress is, it should have been within Congress's authority to do that. The DOJ is in violation of an existing law. They had until December 31st to release all the Epstein files signed into law by Donald Trump. Only one Republican in the entire House of Representatives voted against it. And guess what? 22 days later, and we only have 1% of the documents released. No judge is willing to hold Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, in contempt. No Republicans who voted for it are talking about it. It's really disgraceful. Again, it's the Republicans just don't give a crap about these women and young women, underage women that were forcibly raped and forced into a life of sex. It's just disgraceful. Trump is underwater on every single poll that concerns the economy, stability, and his president, even on immigration. He was so far ahead, but now way ICE is harassing documented aliens and citizens, it has swung the other way. Again, I talked about how disgusting it was that the federal government has not investigated the Renee Good shooting and only investigating Mayor Fry, Governor Walz, and Renee Good and her girlfriend. So with that said, I'm happy to be back. Everybody be safe. We're supposed to have a pretty cold weekend, maybe an ice storm or two. It doesn't look like we're going to get it here in South Carolina, but everybody please be safe. Godspeed. I spoke to a couple Rotary groups last week, which I love, about my book, Anything But Bland. Sales were really good during Christmas. I really appreciate it. If you want me to come to speak at your Rotary group or a book club or a leadership group or Kiwanis or the Lions Club, just let me know. I'll be glad to come speak to your group. Go to my law firm, www.blandrichter.com. You'll see I updated my resume and a brief synopsis of my history as a lawyer. So everybody take care. Bye.